There's still rumbling on, Olivia, the rail story, no sign of any deal.
No, and in fact, if anything, the problem has got even worse. It looks like we're further away from a deal than we've been in weeks and weeks. The RMT has now said not only does it reject the offer that's on the table at the moment, which is of a 9% pay rise over 2 years, but it's also said that it would reject any future offers which are linked to a change in working conditions. What the rail network has offered is a 9% pay increase, which is pegged to savings made by changing the way that workers operate, and they've said that they won't take that at all. So although the tone has softened a little bit, and anyone who's been following this closely will see that the language being used by Mark Harper and Mick Lynch is definitely a little bit more congenial than it was perhaps in November or December, actually in substance we are further away from a deal than ever before. The only bright spot for the government is that the RMT union members didn't actually vote on this deal, and there is a chance that we know that they're getting a little bit tired of these strikes because they're losing out on pay. And there's now been 20 days of strikes, I think it is, in the past 3 months. And there is a chance that they will decide not to vote to strike next time the question is put to them.
Because it seems like the RMT... I mean, I'm not trying to take a view on this, but the RMT, you would argue, has boxed itself into a corner, hasn't it? Because if it said this is our absolute position, we will not accept any compromise at all... Well, you can't imagine the government moving forward and say, all right, well, you can have your 9% or even 8% or 6% if you're not going to make any changes. They're just not going to do it, are they?
Well, it doesn't look like it, but on the other hand, the RMT does have a relatively strong position because Rishi Sunak isn't a particularly politically strong Prime Minister at the moment. We know that there is a sort of civil war in the Conservative Party over tax. He has Liz Truss and Boris Johnson both sort of breathing down his neck from opposite positions. And the last thing he wants to be is the Prime Minister who oversaw years of rail strikes which essentially ground the country to a halt. So they do have some political leverage, but it is possible, as you're sort of suggesting, that they might have overplayed their hand a bit because we are beginning to see public support for the strikes begin to wane. And as I mentioned, we know that there are strikers in those unions who don't particularly want to be striking anymore and want to get back to work so that they can get their paychecks.
Yeah. What is happening in terms of our economic situation now? It's a bit of a big question, isn't it? But the fact that, yes, we got the news yesterday that after the latest GDP figures that we are not in recession, despite the fact the Bank of England were telling us 6 months ago we were going to enter this very long recession. They've been proved wrong on all of that, even though it's absolutely flat. We're at zero growth. But are we at a point where we're at a good base to start moving onwards and upwards?
Well, I think you can spin it either way, and I'm sure that both of our political parties will. The way that Jeremy Hunt is painting this is that to have managed to have avoided the recession which was being warned of last year is a sign that Rishi Sunak and him as Chancellor have managed to steady the market since the Liz Truss budget. And as you suggest, we are now at a place where we can begin to grow from. On the other hand, there is an argument that zero growth might not technically be a recession, but the broad brush picture is the UK economy is flatlining. We are stagnating, which is not much better than actually going into recession. And that means that the civil war at the heart of the Conservative Party over whether to be a low-tax party, which is a question of identity for the Conservative Party, is going to continue to rage on because you've got those like Liz Truss and her sort of Conservative growth caucus, as she's styling it, who say that the only way to get the economy moving again is to lower taxes, to lower corporation tax in particular, and allow businesses to grow. So they will argue that stagnant growth just isn't good enough, and the only way to get people out voting Conservative in the next election is to show that you're serious about growth by lowering taxes. Hunt would say that that's not possible. You need to raise taxes to lower inflation.